The courtyard of the Red Keep buzzed with tension as Lord Eddard Stark stood beside his daughter Sansa, his jaw tight and eyes scanning the crowd. King Robert's court had grown darker, filled with whispers, secrets, and more wine than wisdom. And now the Lord of Winterfell had made a decision that would change the realm. He had refused the betrothal of his daughter to Prince Joffrey. That very morning, Ned had told King Robert plainly, "My daughter will not marry that boy." Robert had roared with laughter at first, thinking it a jest. But when Ned remained still, firm as the North itself, the king's mood shifted. Their friendship, already bruised by the ugliness of court life, cracked a little more. "What, then?" Robert had asked, his tone sharp. "Do you want to insult my house in front of the realm?" "I want to protect my daughter," Ned had replied. "And if she is to marry into House Baratheon, I will give her to a man I can trust. A man like your brother Renly." That single name sent ripples through the court. Renly Baratheon, the younger brother of the king, was popular, charming, and ambitious. Though not the warrior Robert was, Renly had the favor of many in the south. And Ned had seen it. A union between Sansa and Renly would tie House Stark to a man of power, but one with a softer hand than the cruel Joffrey. Sansa, barely 14, had stood stunned as her father told her of the change she had dreamed of, being queen, of marrying the golden-haired prince. But her father's word was law, and she knew better than to argue. "Renly is kind," Ned had said gently, brushing her auburn hair back. "He will treat you with honor." And so it began. Renly, surprised at first by the offer, had accepted quickly. He understood the value. With the Warden of the North on his side, his claim should Robert forward grow stronger. And he had always found Sansa graceful, though young. She would grow into a proper lady of the South. Within days, word of the new betrothal spread. Queen Cersei's fury shook the walls of the Red Keep. Her son had been insulted, her house slighted, and worse, Ned had chosen her husband's own brother as an ally. Tension surged like a rising tide. Varys whispered of plots in the dark. Littlefinger smirked behind his lies, and Ned Stark, as always, stood tall in the storm. But then came the blow. King Robert died. It happened on a hunt, just as in the other world. A wild boar, too much wine, and no one to pull him back. But this time, the realm reacted differently, with Joffrey still a prince, not a betrothed king-in-waiting. The lords of the realm looked around, and they saw Renly with Ned Stark at his side, with the North behind him. Renly Baratheon declared his claim. "I have the temperament, the support, and the blood of Baratheon. The realm needs peace, not a boy ruled by his mother." Cersei acted fast. She tried to seize Ned as she had before, but this time he was prepared. With Renly already on the move, and the gold cloaks split in loyalty, King's Landing turned into a simmering pot ready to boil. Sansa, still caught between girlhood dreams and harsh reality, watched as her life was rewritten again and again. She had once dreamed of being queen to a golden prince. Now, she was to be queen to a Baratheon man with a soft smile and sharp eyes one she barely knew. And as the city prepared for war from within, and the realm stirred with whispers of rebellion and legitimacy, Sansa realized her path would not be one of songs and silks. It would be something harder, darker, but perhaps more true. The city changed overnight. After King Robert's death, the Red Keep no longer belonged to the king's family, became a battleground of names, loyalties, and quiet daggers. Queen Cersei tried to seize power, declaring Joffrey the rightful heir. But her grip was weaker than she imagined. Renly had already moved. Before the ravens could even be trusted, he left King's Landing quietly with Seer Loras and a handful of loyal men. He sent word across the realm, naming himself the true king, with Sansa Stark as his future queen. It was a calculated move, one that caused murmurs in the Reach, the Stormlands, and even the Riverlands. Ned Stark stayed in King's Landing. He knew leaving would seem like retreating. He had no intention of running. Instead, he took control of the city watch, bribing and bargaining with gold and promises of a better future. The gold cloaks were divided, but many hated the Lannisters more than they loved gold. Cersei still believed she had the upper hand. She summoned Ned to the throne room, dressed in her black morning gown, her green eyes cold as ice. "You've betrayed the king's memory," she hissed, standing beside her son. "Joffrey is the heir." "No," Ned said calmly. "He is not Robert's son." Gasps echoed through the court. It was a deadly accusation, one Ned never intended to make. So boldly, but Cersei's arrogance forced his hand. The truth was poison, but it was also the only weapon left in his belt. "Lies," she spat. "Then let the boy be tested," Ned replied. "By the Grand Maester, by the gods, if need be." But Joffrey, ever impatient and cruel, leaped from the Iron Throne and shouted, "Seize him!" That moment split the city. Half the gold cloaks stepped forward. The other half stood still. Swords rang out. Blood spilled on the floor of the throne room. It was not a war, just a massacre of loyalties. And Ned Stark, unlike the world we knew, did not fall that day. His sword was fast. His northern men were fierce. And within minutes, he had captured Cersei and her children, taking control of the keep, and declared Renly Baratheon the true king by right of blood and peace. The realm was stunned, but not silent. Stannis Baratheon, older brother too. Robert and Renly sent his own ravens. He called Renly a usurper and Sansa Stark a pawn of rebellion. He had dragonstone ships and fire in his eyes. Robb Stark, hearing of his father's actions and his sister's new fate, marched south. But not in rebellion this time, in support. He marched with banners flying high, not to avenge, but to stand beside his father in this war of crowns. Sansa, meanwhile, found herself sailing to Highgarden. Renly had promised her safety and honor, but he also wanted distance from the capital. While he built his alliances, she lived in rose-covered halls, surrounded by courtiers and soft smiles. But her heart stayed heavy. She did not love Renly. She didn't hate him either. He was kind, always smiling, treating her like a future queen. But she saw how he looked at Loras Tyrellsoft, longing, almost like how she had once looked at Joffrey. That confused her. Lady Olenna Tyrell, sharp as steel and unafraid of truth, cornered her one evening. "Do you know what you are, child?" she asked. Sansa shook her head. "You're a key. A pretty little key opening doors to power. But be careful which lock you turn. Some doors never close once opened." Sansa didn't fully understand, but she listened back in King's Landing. Ned wrote to Renly, "Come quickly. The Iron Throne cannot remain empty for long." Renly answered, "I come with banners and a crown." War was now inevitable. 3 Baratheons, 1 Iron Throne, and a Stark girl in the middle of it all. Renly Baratheon rode into King's Landing not as a prince, but as a king. The city watched with wide eyes and uncertain hearts as his banners, green stags and golden roses, filled the streets. Behind him marched the finest soldiers of the Reach. and Stormlands, their armor gleaming, their loyalty unshaken. Cialora's Tyrell rode at his side, ever the knight of flowers, his lance upright and his eyes set only on Renly. Atop the Iron Throne sat no one. Joffrey had been removed and locked away, along with his mother and siblings. Ned had kept them alive, but only just. He knew killing Cersei would make enemies faster than it would bring peace. He had seen what rash decisions cost men. Renly entered the throne room in full armor. His eyes scanned the Iron Throne, then turned to Ned. "You've kept your word," Renly said, "and now I must keep mine." Ned nodded but said nothing. He didn't believe in thrones, or crowns, or oaths easily. But he believed in survival. And right now, Renly was the best hope they had. The lords of the realm gathered for a grand coronation. House Tyrell brought gold and grain. House Tully stood behind the Starks. Even the Martells, far in the south, sent envoys, curious and cautious. Sansa Stark, now betrothed to Renly, was dressed in a gown of dark green and silver. Her hair was braided like a queen's, her eyes quiet and unreadable. As Renly was crowned King of the Seven Kingdoms by the High Septon, a silence fell over the crowd. But it wasn't peace, because Stannis had declared himself king too, from Dragonstone. He sent letters laced with fury. Renly is no true heir. He is younger and weaker. And Ned Stark aids a traitor. And worse, he brought fire with him. The rumors spread like wind over dry grass. Stannis had found a red priestess, a woman with eyes like glowing coals and a voice that promised victory through flame. Melisandre of Ashai. People whispered that she could see the future, that she could birth shadows, that she burned idols and kings alike. Renly laughed at the rumors. Ned didn't. And then the first raven came. Storm's End had fallen not by siege, but by fear. The men guarding it spoke of shadows moving through the walls, of commanders dying in locked rooms with no marks upon them. And all the while, Stannis sailed westward, his army larger, his ships faster, his mind like a blade sharpened by fire and hate. Renly began to doubt. He rode to Ned's chambers one night, cloak damp from rain, his face no longer smiling. "This war won't be won with swords alone," he said, "and you're just learning that now." Ned replied grimly. They argued, not in shouts, but in quiet, bitter truths. Ned warned him of overconfidence. Renly warned of betrayal. "Your daughter is to be my queen," Renly said, "but if she weds into a dying crown, what becomes of her?" Ned's eyes narrowed. "She becomes stronger than any queen this realm has seen." Outside the chamber, Sansa listened. Her hands were shaking. She was no longer the girl who dreamed of princes and songs. She was the daughter of war now, and in her heart a strange steel was beginning to form. She asked to see Renly the next morning, alone. He welcomed her with his usual charm, but there was a shadow beneath it. "I know what people say," Sansa said plainly, "about you and Cialora's, about your love." Renly froze. "I don't care," she continued. "Love isn't what keeps crowns on heads. Power does. You want my father's loyalty? Then promise me one thing." "What?" "When I am queen," she said slowly, "I will not be your ornament. I will rule beside you. Speak for the North. Be heard, not just seen." Renly blinked. Then he smiled, not mockingly, but with a trace of awe. "You're more Stark than I thought," he said. "And more than you expect," she replied. The storm was coming. 3 kings now battled for one throne. But in the heart of it all, a girl once groomed for songs, was now learning the language of steel and fire. The city walls were thick with smoke and the smell of iron. Stannis Baratheon's fleet had surrounded Blackwater Bay. His ships moved like a dark tide, blocking every route in and out of King's Landing. Unlike Renly, Stannis did not seek favor or smiles. He sought justice, sharp and absolute. And behind him stood the Red Woman, Melisandre, her eyes burning with purpose. Within the Red Keep, preparations for war began. Renly refused to abandon the capital. Ned Stark insisted the city be fortified, sending men to reinforce the gates, archers to the walls, and blacksmiths to make new weapons by the hour. He even allowed wildfire to be stored in secret chambers beneath the city, an act he once would have scorned. Sansa watched it all unfold from the tower. She was no longer a pawn in a dress. She had begun to study the court, listening to whispers, watching alliances shift like sand. She dined with the Tyrells, sat with the council, and took notes when no one thought she was paying attention. War is a man's game, Lady Olenna said to her one evening. But queens who know how to play don't have to lift a sword to win. Sansa asked questions about food supplies, about defenses, about loyalty. Even Renly started bringing her into council meetings, to the annoyance of some lords who thought her presence decorative. But Ned approved silently. He saw in her the makings of someone greater than a lady someone, who could shape kingdoms. Then came the night the sky turned red. It began with a scream. A guard outside Renly's chambers cried out before dropping dead. When they opened the door, they found Renly still breathing but pale and trembling. Shadows had moved through his chamber, and only Melisandre's name passed his lips. She sensed something not of this world. Ned rushed in, sword drawn, but found nothing. Only the air cold and unnatural. Renly survived, barely, but it changed him. He grew quiet, his confidence wavered. Loras Tyrell, usually calm and poised, paced like a caged wolf, demanding vengeance. But Stannis wasn't finished. His fleet made landfall by dawn. His men marched toward the city, led by Seer Davos and fire banners carried high. Melisandre remained behind, praying in tongues, promising that the Lord of Light would cleanse the wicked. Panic erupted in the city. Some lords began whispering that Stannis could not be beaten, that he had magic, that even Renly's own blood was being hunted by shadows. That night, Sansa approached her father with a proposal that stunned him. "Let me speak to the people," she said. Ned raised an eyebrow. "Speak to them. Why?" "They need to see something more than knights and swords," she said. "They need to see someone who isn't afraid, someone who believes in Renly, in you." And so she did. Sansa Stark, dressed in northern blue and the green of House Baratheon, stood atop the walls of the Red Keep and spoke to the people below. "I was once promised to a prince who became a monster," she said. "I was once told I would be a queen only to sit quietly. But now I stand with a king who fights not for power but for peace. And I stand with my father who would never bend his knee to fear." The crowd roared. They chanted her name. And in that moment, a shift happened. Renly watched from a distance, awestruck. "She's turning the people," he said. "She's turning into something else," Ned replied. "Something none of us prepared for." And when the final battle came, it was chaos. Stannis attacked from sea and land. His men climbed the walls. His siege towers rolled through the ash-covered roads. But Ned's planning, Renly's alliances, and the wildfire Ned had reluctantly permitted it, all turned the tide. Flames engulfed Stannis' ships, arrows rained from the walls, and the people, stirred by Sansa's words, rose in defense of their city. It was not a total victory. Thousands died. The city burned in parts. But Stannis was pushed back, his fleet shattered, and he retreated to Dragonstone with rage in his bones, but not before leaving a final message, carved in blood. On the gates of the city, the night is dark and full of terrors. I will return. The battle was over, but peace did not return. The fires had been put out, the bodies cleared from the streets, and the city walls repaired. Yet King's Landing still breathed like a wounded animal, nervous, watchful, and bracing for the next strike. Though Stannis had been pushed back, no one believed he was truly defeated. Renly held the throne, but he did not rule from strength. His near-death experience had left him shaken, and whispers in court questioned his courage. Some claimed the Lord of Light had marked him. Others said he would never sit comfortably on the Iron Throne again. Ned Stark took control of the day-to-day matters. As Hand of the King, he ordered food be brought from the Reach, rebuilt alliances with wary lords, and kept the city stable. He had never wanted power, but now he carried it like a burden across his shoulders, and Sansa became something else entirely. She stood beside Renly during court sessions. She spoke with ambassadors, hosted the ladies of noble houses, and managed whispers with as much skill as a swordmaster in battle. She read raven letters before others did. She knew which lords were lying just by how they bowed. Her name travelled through the realm, faster than any raven. Some feared her, some admired her, but all paid attention. Lady Olenna called her the Quiet Lioness. Seer Loras, once cold to her, now offered his counsel with respect. Even Littlefinger, still lurking in the shadows, looked at her not as a pawn but as a player, yet Sansa's heart was not untouched. Joffrey's name still echoed in the corners of her nightmares. She remembered his cruelty, his smile when he hurt, his voice that once made her tremble, not with love, but with fear disguised as desire. She had escaped that fate, but she saw the price others paid. The Lannisters were still imprisoned, and rumours grew of Tywin mustering an army in the west. Then came the letter from Dragonstonne, written in a thin, harsh script, addressed to King Renly, sealed with black wax. The Lord of Light does not forget. Your false queen shall burn. It was signed only with a cimbler, stag wreathed in fire. Ned read it first, then Renly, and finally, it was placed in Sansa's hands. She didn't flinch. We can't let him march again, she said. He's regrouping, Ned agreed, but he's not yet strong enough to siege again. He needs more allies, or more magic. Renly leaned back on the throne. Then we strike before he's ready. But Sansa shook her head. No, we need more than swords. We need to shake the realm awake. She looked to her father. Call a great council. A what? Renly frowned. Call the lords of every region. Invite them to King's Landing, not for war, but for peace. Let them see the kingdom united, under one crown, under one king, and one queen. The word queen settled heavily in the room. Renly's eyes widened. You mean, yes, Sansa said. Marry me, now, before another shadow tries to take you, before Stannis poisons the realm with his fire. Show the world that the North stands with the throne not by politics, by blood. Ned stared at her, stunned. This wasn't the daughter he'd brought to court. This was someone else, sharper, braver. shaped by betrayal and fire. Renly hesitated, then smiled. I suppose it's time I had a true wedding. And so, within the week, banners were raised once more, this time not for battle, but for union. Sansa Stark was wed to King Renly Baratheon, in the godswood of the Red Keep, beneath a heart tree flown in from the north. The ceremony was short, but the feast that followed stretched into the night. Lords drank to their health, and ravens carried news to every corner of the realm. The north and south are one. King Renly reigns with Queen Sansa by his side. But on the shores of Dragonstone, Melisandre stood beside Stannis and watched. The flames rise in the night. She has changed the course of fate. The Red Woman said. Stannis stared into the fire, unmoved. Then we change it again. The moon hung low over Dragonstone, casting pale light on waves that hit the shore like steady drumbeats. Inside the black stone castle, Stannis Baratheon stood alone in the war room, staring at the table shaped like Westeros. His jaw was clenched, eyes shadowed. Melisandre watched him from across the room, her crimson robes whispering as she moved. She sits beside him now, she said softly, the red-haired girl, the wolf-made queen. She is a distraction, Stannis growled. She is a threat, Melisandre corrected. The north is no longer in your reach. The Tyrells are no longer uncertain. The fire that consumed the city did not consume them. Their marriage has silenced half your allies. You are losing them. Stannis didn't respond. He simply stared. At the north, carved into wood, now lost to him, but the fire was not yet out. Back in King's Landing, the city bloomed again. Trade returned. Food flowed in from the Reach. The Faith declared Renly's marriage blessed. And Sansa, now Queen of the Seven Kingdoms, began to wield influence beyond silks and courtesies. She created a council of noble women to oversee affairs neglected by lords. She met with the small folk herself, asking what they needed. Some scoffed, saying it was for show. But when food prices dropped and guards began protecting poorer districts, the scoffs turned into praise. Still, not all was peace. Robb Stark, still Lord of Winterfell, remained wary. He visited the capital under heavy guard, speaking with his sister behind closed doors. "You've grown cold," he said. "Like father, no," Sansa replied. "I've just learned what warmth costs in this place." Robb warned her, "The North remembers. Don't let your crown make you forget it." They parted with hugs, but not trust, and then came the fire. Late one night, a scream echoed through the keep. A servant burst into flame in the kitchen's no oil, no lantern, just fire from nowhere. She died before she could speak. A sigil was found burned into the stone, a flaming stag. "It's her," Ned said grimly. "Melisandre, she's sending warnings." "She wants fear," Sansa whispered. "She's getting it," Renly replied, shaken. Within days, more strange signs appeared. Livestock turned to ash overnight. Ravens flew into fires. Even the high septon collapsed during prayer. Mumbling of shadows in the light. Then the most terrible news arrived. Storm's End had fallen, not in battle, but in horror. The garrison reported ghostly flames in the night. Entire towers turned to black stone. And in the end, the Baratheon banner flew upside down, bloodied and torn. Renly's hand shook when he read the report. "She'll destroy everything," he muttered, just to make way for him. Ned slammed his fist on the table. "Then we stop him. No more holding back." Renly turned to Sansa. "If I die, you won't," she snapped. "But if I do, you'll still rule. You're not just my queen. You are the realm's. Sansa didn't cry. She only nodded. And so a final plan was forged. A fleet was prepared. Not to fight on the open sea, but to land on Dragonstone by night, to end it at the root. Renly would lead the assault. Ned would command the city in his absence. And Sansa would wait with a blade hidden beneath her gown and fear locked behind her eyes. The night Renly left, he kissed her hand once. You would have made a better king, he whispered. You would have made a better husband. She replied with a sad smile. Dragonstone burned. The landing was swift, brutal. Renly's men fought with desperation. Seer Davos turned against his old liege, siding with Renly in the hope of ending madness. Melisandre tried to stop them, but even fire can be drowned in enough blood. Renly found Stannis on the cliffs. You burned your brother's future, Renly said, sword drawn. I burned lies, Stannis replied. And then they fought. No songs would be written of it. Only ash and silence. But when dawn rose, only one man stood, bloodied, breathing, Renly Baratheon. He returned to the city with a limp, a scar over one eye, and silence in his heart. Sansa met him at the gates, her crown already on her head. It's over, he said. No, she replied, it's just begun. And so the realm entered a new age, not ruled by fear or fire or prophecy, but by steel, survival. And a girl who had once dreamed of princes and now stood above kings.